that?
I heard the tail end of folks being excited to be here. So,
Some
so
communication students in the
communication.
three faces you can't see, but there.
I can see some heads.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Not great.
My best friend actually graduated as a communications major.
We love that. Hope to be
I believe it was communication double journalism double major.
That's a dangerous combo.
Yeah.
That's a good combo right there.
So, Leah, as you were walking in, Malcolm and I were mentally taking attendance. We believe that
Who's
there.
there?
Oh, Danielle is
Danielle.
here. Hi, Danielle. Welcome.
Thinking of you today.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hello. I had emails from Gabriel and Carlos that they're not available to be here tonight. So I think this is who we are expecting. Okay.
And I remember taking away from
Oh,
the last
Lord.
meeting that I would individually check with people, did these second Tuesdays of the month continue to work? And everybody that I heard from said yes.
Mhm.
So in general, yes, but just not tonight.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so in my hunt to find meeting minutes from January, unfortunately, I could not find them. I think we all took notes and I think we'll discover them at some point. But we had identified action items for specific projects, and so I will need some collective thinking about what exactly we need to follow up on. But before we do that, did we want to do introductions because there are some folks in the room that don't know us?
I think so. That
Okay.
makes sense.
All right, well, I can start. So I'm Leah Huckala. I'm a member of the Orono community. I'm here because I'm passionate about DEIB work. I mean, there are like all of these acronyms now: justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and I'm sure more things. Belonging, that's the other one. And I'm a faculty at the University of Maine. I have a wife and a daughter who also live here in the Orono community.
I'm Malcolm Himshoot, he, him. I live in Orono and serve in ministry at the Church of Universal Fellowship in Orono. And in other cities where I've lived, I've worked on racial justice things as a white person organizing in the white community. And I'm a trans man, and open and affirming ministry is something that our church is known for.
Sonia Berthasell, she, her pronouns. I'm a member of the Orono Town Council, so I serve as the liaison from that group to this group, which helps advise the town council on DEI issues. And I'm really passionate about DEI issues myself. I serve as director of the Wilson Center, which does a lot of multicultural and multi-faith work in the Orono community. And we'll pass it on the line over to Danny.
Hello there. I'm Danny Gabrielli, and I am happy to be here. I love DEI and I love diversity. I am a trainer of diversity at my new position that I'm working, and I also teach courses at SNHU on diversity. I absolutely love this committee, and I'm really excited about some things that are going to be rolling forward. So happy to be here and meet all of you that I haven't met before.
All right. I am Michael, or B, depending on where you know me in spaces. My last name is Williams, and I am primarily they, them, but I'm not too particularly perturbed at the moment. I'm a resident of Orono, and I have a long history of working in the community as in different communities as an advocate and a leader, and I'm excited to kind of be pushing forward in terms of what we can do for Orono, and we've got some really cool stuff going on. And overall, I'm I'm a queer person. I am disabled, and I hope to represent as many communities as possible that I fall into.
Do you folks want to introduce yourself? Welcome to, you don't need to.
Well, yeah, my name is Jenna Bard. I'm a sophomore at the University of Maine studying communications. I'm just really excited to be here and hear what everyone has to say about everything.
I'm Peyton and I am also a communications major. I as well am very excited to be here.
I'm Sam. I'm a business major over in Orono. I just kind of tagged along.
Well, thanks for introducing yourself and welcome. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is follow-up projects.
Yeah. All right, I have a follow-up on an ongoing project. I did touch base with our council chair, Jeff Wingard, about what the process would be to discuss items that were in a Human Rights Commission case related to the town of Orono. And it looks like our lawyer could come meet with this group on our request. And we would be doing that in executive session. So we wouldn't be on camera, but would have an opportunity to speak sort of privately with the town's lawyer if we chose to do so. Our council chair also asked me to pass along that we are over budget on like lawyer fees for this year. And so use that judiciously. And if the committee felt that that was sort of an important thing to be moving forward at this time. But that that would be the process and is very much available to us. So that is my report back.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I was thinking of another report back of an
Can
ongoing
we
item.
Pause and have a quick discussion about the HRC.
Great.
So given the potential limitations of cost
Mhm.
for the lawyer, the initial recommendation was not to have the town lawyer talk to us, but have someone from the Human Rights Commission
Mm.
talk to us. And I'm wondering if that might be a cheaper option and also answer some of the questions that we originally were grappling with about like, what is the HRC and how,
Yeah.
what's the process? Like when
Information
someone
about-
files a complaint, like how does it get elevated?
Yeah, I expect that would also be possible. And I apologize that I didn't remember that
That's
that was part of
okay.
our question.
It's totally okay. I'm interested in the lawyer perspective,
Yeah.
but if we're looking at costs,
Mhm.
then perhaps this is a cheaper alternative. So Sonia, would you be willing to, look into that? All right,
I can do that.
thank you. Okay. Anything else,
Yes.
folks online?
Um,
Michael?
Couple things. So first off, I do think that contacting a representative for the HRC sounds like the best idea. I do think that sounds awesome. I do worry that due to the legalities of this whole kind of situation, that the HRC may not be able to specifically disclose things from their side about this case, considering how much the town has been bound legally. I am worried that while the HRC representative may be able to provide information about their organization's process and their overall processes and their information on who they are and what they do, I don't know that they would be able to provide specific like what is essentially partial legal counsel sort of in this case, just because I worry that there's also additional legal bounds to that. But I do think overall, whether or not we can kind of speak to the HRC representative specifically about this case, whether or not I still think it's a good idea to bring them in and have them explain what the Human Rights Commission is and what they do.
From previous meetings, it was made very clear, at least to me, that we are not allowed to talk about the case. And that wouldn't be the purpose of inviting either the lawyer or HRC to talk about the process. I think it was just more just to inform us because we it didn't seem like we understood, like, what does it take to file a complaint? What does the process look like? What are the steps that are taken once the complaint is filed? So my anticipation would be that we don't ask any specifics about the case because it's settled, and it sounds like because we're a town entity, we're not even allowed to really discuss that anymore. Are others recalling anything different?
In thinking about this, I almost wonder if we could think about it and then come back to it.
Mhm.
My, for action. So like bring it up tonight,
Mhm.
but maybe put it on for action later.
Mhm.
The feeling I'm having as I'm picturing going to a meeting where I get information that I can't do anything with, that I can't share. What am I supposed to do with? I feel that I don't know why I would go to that meeting, you know, if my role on the commission has to do with communication in the community. It's jarring to picture going to a closed session to just inform myself. I don't know. So
Can you say more about that? So inform yourself about the prior case or about the HRC process?
the lawyer version.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Just trying to think through the purposes for
Yeah.
which we would have different kinds of meetings.
I certainly have to agree. I think that both in the interest of being recognized as fiscally responsible, but also kind of in general, I think that if we can just bring a representative in for HRC to give us a generalized overview and give everybody else a generalized overview, I think that it may be better off for us to kind of close the case in terms of lawyer interactions with the town. I think that bringing in a representative to kind of give us the process, as you said, Leah, of what does it take to file a complaint? What does that process look like? What are the steps for that? What's the important information that people need to know if they ever have to come in contact with the commission? I think that feels personally as if it would be more worthy of our time and resources.
I still have questions, but maybe if we come back to it with even more wisdom from the bigger group, like what is our role there with that?
Yeah.
So in terms of next steps before our next meeting, if possible, I think it does make sense for Sonia to just even inquire
Mhm.
about whether or not it's possible for HRC to send a representative at some point in the future.
Sure.
And then at our next meeting, we can discuss whether or not we want to pursue that
Mhm.
and or if we want to pursue the lawyer option as well.
Sure.
All right.
Sounds great. So we're adding this as something to follow up on for next meeting. Woohoo.
I am taking meeting notes.
Oh, great. Thanks, Leah.
I am also taking detailed notes.
Thank you, Michael. We can combine and
Yeah.
Yes.
the
And
more the better.
Yes, I sent over my own notes, but I know that they were unfortunately didn't quite capture what we were looking for.
And I believe Danielle has a sort of report. We did meet up and do a little brainstorming, which was mostly Danielle's brilliant brainstorming about the sort of Black Literacy Night concept. So that's another item to follow up on our follow-ups of ongoing projects.
Yes, so one of my favorite things actually is to teach Black history. I found that too often people are teaching it from a really almost negative connotation. I've noticed that people will teach about slavery or the civil rights movement and they just try to overcome. I agree that those things, slavery was horrible and the civil rights movement has a lot of brilliance and power behind it. But when we only choose to teach in those ways, we are missing an entire culture. my goal is to create a literacy night where there will be an exploration of that culture. And it will be more about hair, about food, about music, about the wonderful additions to our society by African American, including inventors. I think we forget too often that we have some brilliant minds, and even those of us that eat potato chips don't think about the fact that it came from an African American. So I think that what I'd like to see is some positivity brought around this topic. I am envisioning doing some activities. So this summer at the Wilson Center, I put together a presentation that went really well, and it is kind of like a Black History quiz, but it talks about the different areas and the music, and it's a really cool way, and it's a very interactive way to learn about maybe the elements that people did not know about. I'm hoping to bring some solidarity to this community, and I do know that we have people of color here. I think the concern for me has been how to access this population and how to encourage them to be, to be involved in our diversity movements. And I think one of the ways to do that is to create nights like this where people will want to come and celebrate history and celebrate the beauty of the community rather than just pointing out the negatives and the difficulties that were there before. So that's sort of where I'm coming from with this. I don't think it's going to take a lot of money, but I do think it's going to take planning. So I will be working on that. And I am hopeful to bring this to the community. I feel like we're missing this. I think we do a really good job with learning about, there's more room to grow, but I think we do a pretty good job about covering, at least in some ways, Indigenous cultures. I think that we're really struggling to identify how to cover and really meet the needs of the African American culture. So I guess that is my update.
Wonderful.
I continue to love this idea, Danielle. It sounds really great. And I wanted to follow up. You said funding needs are probably minimal, but if there are some funding needs, the town council has a mini grant application and a pool of money to be funding little things that the community wants to do that are kind of up to $1,000 sort of seed money for special projects and things that would be really enriching our shared life. And it sounds to me like snacks and materials for a night like this could be a really strong application if you did have some funding needs.
Absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. That would be great.
Cool.
All right, in terms of next steps then, Danielle, have you talked about specific dates and or times that you're looking to throw this event?
Yes, I'm looking to, I'm hoping to have it maybe in April. I think that would be a really good time to have it. I am somebody that's very against tourist curriculum. So when it comes to let's celebrate Black History Month in February, or in January, and, thinking about Martin Luther King, or, I don't like that kind of stuff because I think that it limits, and it should be taught all year round. So I imagine that this is not just going to be a thing that's just done in April. I'd like to see it happen multiple times across the year.
Great. So perhaps the first one is in April and then we build on that.
Yes.
Danielle, how do you feel about taking the lead and in looking into / applying for a mini grant from the town council?
I feel pretty confident about that. I've written a mini grant before, but I know it's a lot of work. So I think I can definitely, I would say towards the middle of March, it would be a little bit better time, just because of some things that are happening in my life right now. But I definitely want to do my best. If I could have some support from somebody, that might be helpful too, at this point.
So I don't know what the timeline of these grants are.
It's like a first come, first served basis, and we do still have funds, like plenty of funds left at the moment, although I think more people are hearing about them, so I can't really like predict exactly when all of them will be claimed. Yeah, I think that it's not gonna be like, I'm sure that we can find other partners and sources of funding to make sure that this event can be successful.
I feel
But if it works out in your life or in our shared lives to apply for a mini grant, that is a pretty straightforward application and might be sort of an easy way to get the kind of momentum to really make this happen with style. I can't volunteer to help write that grant because I'm part of the committee that oversees it, so that would be a conflict of interest for me, but
Did Gabe write one of those grants for the?
Gabriel did write one of those
Great.
grants for the Wabanaki Winter Celebration, which is how they got a special musician who was really cool to come be part of that event.
That was lovely, and that was just a week and a half ago.
It was, yeah, it was
Isn't it
last month, I
January?
guess.
Was it 6 weeks ago?
It was 6 weeks ago. I know, time flies.
Okay, so Danielle, if you just want to look into kind of the details of it, I can put it as an action item for the committee to talk about if you're not able to engage in any of the writing of it
Okay.
for our next meeting.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely like follow up and point you in the direction of the correct link on the website, which sometimes is the hardest thing, is just to find where to look for the thing and then the rest takes care of itself. So
Yeah, I just want to
Carlos
share.
was on one of those grants in November when it was Mexico.
Carlos didn't. I don't think we had the program launched yet at that point, so I just bought a bunch of supplies out of pocket for that. Which I don't regret because it was super fun and worth doing. We threw a Day of the Dead themed potluck. It was really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like in a couple weeks, I should be better. Currently my wife is passing away, so that's why I have to kind of keep my priorities straight at this moment. But in about a week or two, I can probably get started on that or reach out to you or move from there.
Well, certainly take the time that you need. I think that the committee can provide support, so you can always email us, and my guess is someone will step in to help. And like I said, if we're not able to provide capacity within the time before our next meeting, perhaps we can set aside some time at our next meeting to work on the grant.
Yeah,
I think that would be a worthy.
I think that
use
would
of
be
our
totally
time.
fine.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And I'm sorry to hear about your wife.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Next follow-up item, Malcolm?
Related to the ongoing relationship repair that between the town formally and the Penobscot Nation Council would revolve around communication and signage for the town, that ongoing batch of work. There was a brilliant newspaper story in the Bangor Daily News, and I wanted to make sure we said that in the meeting and encourage people to check it out in public. I also wanted to make sure Michael knew about it so that a link to this story lands in our phenomenal website chronicle log that you're doing for us. It was dated Monday, February. Was it this week or last week? I'm sorry, I don't know what's.
I can't remember, but I can look it up right now.
Um,
I also haven't read the article because it was behind a paywall and that's,
Does anyone have access to that article?
I think, I know some people who
Find
have
access.
I can
yeah.
have access in like 4 minutes. Give me 4
Yeah.
minutes.
It'd be great if we could, I didn't even know there was an article.
And
Yeah,
it said
I
like
heard
current
that it was-
state,
I heard
you
that
know,
it was a good
everything up to
article and
here, and then
factual.
current state. And it said that the letter was delivered, and it said with a couple of spokespeople how they thought it was a good process. But I don't know, and maybe this is our role as a committee to ask for the update on. So if we know the letter was delivered, is there further action on that? Like,
February 5th. So I think the town council's perspective is that we are waiting to hear from the Penobscot Nation Council if they would like to partner with us on future signage efforts. And to my understanding, we haven't heard from them yet, but I'm still hopeful that we might.
That makes sense. That's a good timestamp. So you said the story was February 5th in the newspaper.
Yes.
I was thinking about that because, okay, this is another kind of an update.
Yes.
2 weeks ago, maybe it's been a long day, I don't know. Myself and Penny King were in this room kind of representing the idea of DEIB in conversation with the recruiter, paid consultant people who are, who have a role preparing for and finding the next town manager. So this was a 30-minute slot that was them getting to know Orono through the things that we might say about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And though I said some stuff about the Penobscot Nation or Wabanaki history here, indigenous things, and Penny said some stuff about the mosque. You know, this was 30 minutes in the week of meetings that these recruiters had, and I realized it's not like they would know from that which cultural competencies might be needed in the next town manager, and it's not like the next town manager will necessarily bring those particular cultural competencies. Who knows? What if they're Filipino from Brazil and they bring a whole bunch of cultural competencies, but they don't yet know about Wabanaki tribal progress here? What if they don't yet know about the mosque and the mosque's situation and context here? How would we orient whoever the next town manager is? That's what I left that night thinking. How would we put the next formal staff leader in a good position to onboard with the kind of communities that we've learned about over the last 8 months if we're on this committee, or 10 months. And so that's where I was thinking your work, Michael, might come back up, that if there's a way to be brought in to these ongoing storylines that we're reporting about now. We could share that with that person, and that news story will do a great job of orienting whoever reads it to the history of, to the issues that are still on our plate.
I really like that framing question, Malcolm. I hadn't really thought about that exact piece of the town manager search process. Backstory, we're in the process of hiring a new town manager, which is kind of like the CEO for the whole town. So it's a really important leadership position. Yeah, I really like how do we be intentional about helping that person get oriented to all the things they'll need to know, which I'm sure town departments and a lot of folks have thoughts and existing frameworks for, but in terms of diversity issues in town, this group is as good a group as most to be thinking ahead about that and holding that question with some intentionality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you thought about that question and think that there's a role that our committee can play in helping fulfill potentially some of the gaps. I think that is certainly connected to the mission of our committee. If anything, I think that we should definitely have an introductory meeting with the new town council or the new town manager, just to orient them to us and how we can be a resource or serve them.
If we got good at it, whatever the orienting materials might be, then it's probably a cyclical thing that we, when the new town councilors are elected and every year it's a new council because it's changed somewhat. What would be the hope for sharing certain stories, symbols, knowledge, something?
Yeah. So that people who are walking into sort of positions of importance in town have a mechanism for learning some of the shared history that's really contextual, and that if you are not fully briefed, it can be easy to just sort of repeat history's mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. I have a thing that's related to the town manager search project process, but is really a tangent to what Malcolm just said. Should we do that now, or should we find a different time in our meeting agenda to do that, Leah?
I think it's fine. If
It's fine to be a little nonlinear.
tangentially related.
This is super tangentially related, but on the subject of the manager search process, I wanted to report back the town council's thinking about a question that related to DEI and ask your opinion on it. So we're working with our search recruiter to talk about various levels of sort of blind screening of candidates. And we decided to have sort of a blind screening of candidates for our first round of assessment, such that their names and pronouns are all removed, so that any biases that we have about the kinds of names that people have or their gender pronouns, those things are removed, and we're looking at candidates' resumes just based on the merits of their backgrounds, and not anything that we would subliminally infer about who they are. So we opted into that level of blind review, but the town council at the sort of second level of review, we had the option to either be watching sort of video interviews of the candidates, or listening just to audio and having the video hidden, so that, again, there's this sort of like level of review where you're not biased by what people look like. And the town council opted to want to see the videos because we felt that body language in how people present themselves was an important aspect of communication that we wanted to be able to see and have access to in the process of screening candidates. We sort of told the recruiter we're going in that direction, but we also, it was raised as a question for this group: what do you all think, and would there actually be advantages to doing it the other way, where we're listening to audio recordings only? And so if you think that we're on the wrong track with wanting to see people's body language, we would love to hear it sooner rather than later, so we can change course. What are your thoughts?
Some of my research is related to bias in faculty search processes, so I can give you some feedback.
That's
based
great.
on
Let's hear it.
research related to search processes for faculty. So I
Cool.
think that it's
It's
transferable.
probably transferable, yes.
There will be bias
Yeah.
if you look at the video.
Yeah.
There will be bias if you listen too. There
Yep.
will be. However, there are ways to mitigate bias,
Mhm.
and the ways that I am thinking of, just drawing from the research,
Mhm.
my research and the research about search processes and mitigating bias. Firstly, make sure that there are evaluation rubrics that each individual is filling out separately or independently. Like, you could all be watching it together, but you have your own sheet,
Mhm.
so that you are not swayed by any other's perspective. Another way to mitigate bias is to, and this will take more time, but it is, I think, the most effective strategy in this case, to listen first, fill out the evaluation criteria, and then watch and fill it out. So turn in that evaluation criteria after you listen to it, so you cannot change it,
Uh-huh.
and then have a fresh evaluation rubric, whether it's, I mean, it should probably be the same. You might add something that's related to body language, because obviously you can't evaluate that piece,
Yeah.
but everything else should be the same. And so that way, if there are differences,
Mhm.
and there probably will be, because you're listening to it twice, and
Yeah.
that's probably a good thing,
Yeah.
but you'll be able to flesh out, is this difference because this person makes me uncomfortable? Do I have an implicit bias
Yeah.
about like the way a certain individual looks? Or do I have a bias because of their accent?
Mhm.
And, or it could be that you picked up on something that you didn't the first time. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an indicator of bias, but it is a good way to track
Mm.
bias. I just don't
Cool.
know if they have enough time to do that.
I am not sure either, but this is a really helpful insight that I am going to take back to the town council and the folks chairing the search committee. To let them know that these are helpful strategies for mitigating bias and if time isn't prohibitive and.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an important task, and so I think the town council at least is committed to like putting in the hours to do a good job on it, and if a double listen through a set of 10 finalists is what that takes, that feels worth it to me potentially. Yeah.
And if I could, I mean,
Yeah.
I have your ear.
And since you have my ear, since I asked the exact right
Sure,
person
talk about it.
apparently.
I would, so within that evaluation
Yeah.
rubric,
Yeah.
make sure that DEIB is a value that is measured.
Hmm.
Like give it points and also make sure that all of this is quantifiable.
Mhm.
So the committee needs to, or the search committee
Mhm.
needs to agree upon like, well, how many points do we want to give diversity, equity, and inclusion, or however you want to label it? How many points do we want to give good communication skills? And the more specific you can be, the better,
Yeah.
the less there is chance for bias.
That's interesting. The recruiters were kind of hearing us and then feeding back. So the adjectives that they took from our short conversation were wonderful. But when I say them, you'll know that they're also kind of value neutral with respect to what you just said. So emotional maturity and unity builder.
Hmm.
Were some things that they said that it would be characteristics of the next town manager that we were describing. But yeah, does that get to, like, if you had been in the room, I think, Leah, your
I would have
suggestion would have
pushed.
been, let's name a value in
Yes,
DEI. and Put that
absolutely.
into the search process and then make it quantifiable. Yeah.
Incidentally, I think we're still accepting volunteers for the town manager search
I
committee.
cannot volunteer.
wow.
for that. I'm sorry, I want
Fair enough.
to, but I know my limits.
All good. It would be cool to have a student be part of that too. We're putting together a committee to hire a new town manager. If you want to apply, email managersearch@orono.org.
I'm happy to provide advice. I just
Cool.
can't
That's totally legit.
commit to the time.
Yep, understand that.
So those
yeah,
are my other.
Thank you for this advice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 cents.
And if useful, I worked on 4 3-minute videos for overcoming bias for search committees in a Christian congregational context, which is democratically elected process. So it runs into some of the same human implicit bias.
Yeah.
And I could share those.
Sure, send them around. Thanks, Malcolm.
Short and sweet.
So Leah had, some really sort of clear research-backed thoughts for me. If anyone else has input on that question of sort of fully blind review versus an ability to see candidates' faces during videos, I would welcome that. And also am happy to move on.
No, yeah, I think I've also been involved in both psychological and sociological research on implicit bias, and I think one of the things that really stuck out to me in Leah's brilliance definitely was making it quantifiable, because one of the biggest things that I see with things like this, where people are going in and they're making judgments in order to do things like hire a really important person, is that they tend to just kind of have these open notes where they'll like kind of pick and choose things, and people will write down things they like. But research and lots of different sciences have shown that if there are categories, like definitely one of the best things that Leah said was definitely talking about like how many points do we want to associate to each thing. So like if you had a category that was like like good communication skills, confident body language, you could have like, all right, is this person like a 1 through 5 on this category or this category? And really you'll find that not only is it more efficient, but it's also more effective, because then you're seeing not only that you can kind of make data into both very sciencey sort of very like data points, but you can also tell a lot of a story about who that person is from those data points. So even if it seems like, I can see how people would be concerned that it's reductive, I think that it would actually bolster someone's characteristics to really highlight their best points. And I definitely think that being able to kind of lay out, all right, what is the most important things for communications? Because I think you should have kind of like overarching categories, but then criteria, overarching category, and then criteria underneath it. So like DEI, and then like the way that they like possibly like use of pronouns, the way that they talk about like minority groups, things like that. Obviously, probably with more specificity. Um, but I think that honestly, that's such an amazing idea. Is really taking data points and making them into things that you can look at and compare against each other, because it'll make the search, I feel like, more impactful.
All right, shall we move on to our next upcoming project, if we have one?
Do we have any other upcoming projects? This is not exactly an upcoming project, but one of my co-counselors earlier today asked if basically like was saying, it was helpful to hear this group's feedback with relation to the signage issue, and she was remembering that there had been like back before this committee proper existed, an ad hoc DEI committee that had come up with a report with recommendations, and she was wondering like, are there some of those recommendations that would be useful to look at and be prioritized by this group? So this isn't exactly a follow-up on ongoing projects, it's more a possible new project, but taking a look at those possible action items that were suggested by a ad hoc DEI committee in the past, and prioritizing like what should the town council be working on is something that at least one town councilor, and two, I guess, if you count me, thinks could be a useful exercise for an upcoming meeting.
I fully support that.
Great.
Where can we find that report?
I can find that and send it around again. I expect it's on the town's website somewhere, but I know it's buried in my email somewhere.
We
So-
pulled it out most recently in preparation for the open house where we were like,
Mm,
hey, town, meet the DIB committee.
mm,
And also we
Okay.
were meeting ourselves. And we pulled that out like from 2021 and put it on a big chart. And we said in 2023, how do we feel about these things? And there was an opportunity for people to check off things or add notes. But it wasn't a huge vibrant interaction on the paper that night. But that's where we most recently saw it, and so we know we still have it.
Yep.
I might as well throw in at this point as any other point. I must go out on medical leave for a bit, March 1st through April something, so I'll miss the next two of our meetings, and so a lot of the dreaming and this precise moment for energy toward what's next is a little bit harder for me.
Mhm.
Thank you for letting us know. Okay, so I'm putting under action items that Sonia will share the ad hoc diversity report,
Sure.
and as a committee, if we can commit to at least spending a few minutes to review some of the recommendations, and then we can discuss it
Great.
at our next meeting. So Malcolm, will you be, you won't be at the next two meetings? Right. Any other upcoming projects? I have far too many items open on my computer, so I can't pull up the agenda anymore. But I do know that, do you have it?
I do. So after follow-ups on ongoing projects, there's an opportunity for public comment. Would any members of the public like to comment? Pete, is there anyone online?
No hands raised now online.
Great. And I might use this public comment time to read off. So I neglected to put our ongoing staff report on this agenda. We should add that to the agenda for next time too. But Lori Carpenter, who normally sits on this committee as a staff person, did send a report that I can read and update us on what town staff has been up to. So 16 staff members representing all departments met with Dustin Ward of It Is Time on January 23rd and worked on the following goals. DEI commitment statement so that members understand overarching focus on DEI efforts. Communicating the prioritization of this work so that staff know how to prioritize it in their daily activities. The goal being this is part of everyday life. Demonstrating progress through specific measurable criteria, including time, change in the town staff culture through shifts in behavior, actions, and emotions. Not having to explain one's existence, especially as a marginalized member. Mitigating and decreasing rates of DEI issues that are currently ongoing. Sort of next major category is onboarding of new employees and their commitment to engage with DEI, including policy review of how staff commit and understand principles of DEI, education both in the front end and continually for staff around DEI concepts, and establishing norms and guidelines for departments to enact and hold. Next major section is collaboration of goals with the DEI committee, picking 1 to 2 to collaborate and work on together, and focusing on equitable operations within all town services. And I think when they are talking about the DEI committee here, she's referring to the sort of staff DEI team rather than this group. And then finally, more effective communication of town department goals, including transparency in future efforts of town departments and better system of communication and getting the word out and receiving input. So that is that staff DEI report, which I really appreciate Lori sending along because it's great to hear what town staff have been up to. And we hope that either she or Jeff will be able to join us next meeting.
The last one you said was intriguing to me, a better
Sure.
system of getting word out and receiving input. We've heard that before. We heard and where we amplified that before as one of the things after the signage was unveiled, and it
Yeah.
was like, that was the moment when some people said, whoa, that's not what it was supposed to be. So there was the communication loop among the things that was missed. And I wonder what a better system looks like. Oh, we heard that, which month was it? In our meeting, somebody was trying to describe, Jeff Wingard was trying to describe what would Orono's best channels look like, not presuming that putting it out on the sign, which is an official channel, is the most effective or the single channel that's gonna hit all the people. And he asked that question. We sort of talked about it for a little bit.
I'm fairly
but-
sure that was in January.
January.
Yeah, based on, so last month, it's based on my December notes, it looks like it was probably last month.
Yeah, do we have insight or suggestions as the DEIB committee of almost a year now? Like what the loop of feedback, what the feedback loop would look like to, and all the different ways that it would get expressed in the different communities that make up the community of Orono.
I'm a big fan of newsletters and things like I guess newsletters, things like the Orono Observer and things like that that go out. I think that for something that would be like about relevant issues, I would probably want to see it go out more than the Orono Observer does. Um, but that combined with um, making probably the website a little bit more accessible, just because personally I have a lot of trouble with the Orono Town website. It can be a bit overwhelming on its kind of front page. This might be actually a good place for the communication students to weigh in if anybody has any like tech background integration there. But basically, just making um, multiple forms of whatever news that they need to put out really is, whether that's a combination of a digital form and the physical form, and just making sure that they can kind of splash that into additionally like local spaces. Like one of the more popular spaces in Orono is the Orono Neighbor Facebook group. I know that there's quite a few people in that, and definitely kind of just getting someone to be able to kind of peek into those spaces. And we have there's people in there all the time who are talking about like all the different happenings in Orono and things like that, which is pretty great because I love that. Speaking of which, there's actually a post that just got put up that they are celebrating the Mardi Gras event. From 6 to 8 at CUF, and that actually just went up in the Orono Neighbors Facebook group. And so that is definitely a great place to kind of be able to splash in news or events here and there, because that's a space that, as long as it isn't overrun by overly formal kind of situations, I think it's a great way to connect with the more intimate pieces of the community.
I think like a variety of communication.
Yeah.
Mediums makes the most sense. And again, the communication students probably know more than me on this, but I think that tailoring communication styles to different community needs, different ways that people like different lifestyles. So some people are driving on this road every day and they see the big sign. Some people are on Facebook and they don't really leave their house very often. So the more ways that we can get messages out, I think the better.
We could also just kind of all take that question with us and be thinking about what our I mean, I think there's a lot of like really amazing communication infrastructure and support that the town already utilizes and does a pretty strong job with. And also it's such a good question to be thinking about where are the gaps in that and where are the opportunities for improved communication flow? And I don't think we need to solve it tonight, but I really appreciate the question, Malcolm. I think it's a good one.
I'd love to kind of splash in very, very quickly, just some updates on the logbook slash compendium. I have provided a static documentation of the document currently. You can access all of its bits and bobs, and I believe as I republish it, it'll see any updates that I'm making to it. I'm currently in the process of sifting through all the notes that we went through last time we did my little presentation of it. There is a lot of suggestions that I have to go through and get on going. I also do want to possibly figure out how to um, sort of pass the main ownership of the document to the town or whatever. I guess a DEIB, its own email or things like that could be, because I of course like have no problems with updating and lovingly caring for this documentation, but obviously, if there's ever a point that I'm not able to tend to it, I would like to be able to not see it stuck in some sort of limbo because I hold the ownership to it.
Hmm.
It's currently hosted by a program called Notion, but obviously there's plenty of potential if it needed to be kind of oriented into its own actual website, but that would be something that I'm not sure who the contact point would be for on that because I don't know. I'm sure we probably have a dedicated tech person because I know we always have um, some folks buzzing around managing the Zoom. So if anybody's got some input on that, that would be wicked.
This feels to me like a topic for a subsequent meeting. I don't feel like I have the answers on this, but I do think
Oh
it
yeah,
could
it was
come-
more just like a does
Yeah.
anybody know a contact point?
Yeah,
I don't intend to.
I think that our town manager or interim town manager, Cornell, would be the right person to double check with who the appropriate staff contact is, who could maybe come meet with us and talk about like, well, what is the simple tech solution to sort of institutionalizing this? So
Yeah, I definitely didn't
so
think
we
this
can
was going to
ask,
be kind
we
of
can
a
try
one
to
and done.
invite that person to one of our upcoming meetings, as Cornell suggests, and
Cool.
make that the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I certainly didn't expect this to be a one and done. It was more of like a can we just gently put a pin in that so that we can make sure that there isn't any issues going forward.
Thinking about that from the, like an end user point of view, that takes me right over on the screen next to you to Danielle's idea of like a year ago when she was hearing about some resources in some DEIB public forum, and she was like, well, I would like to follow up on those resources for my work over here in literacy. What, what's the best way to get those resources? And so this is not unlike that, like in terms of how we could have a bunch of materials and knowledge, but make it usable and take and use type thing. And the library comes to my mind as a community resource that's all about disseminating information and having people to access whatever they need to grow and use it. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just adding that into the pin we just stuck in case the library is part of the puzzle.
I recently have spent quite some time in the library and I love it there. It's awesome. It's been such a great resource. I'm currently reading a book on the concept of Hygge, Hygge. It's like the Danish concept of bringing your life together through like intentional like design. It's probably the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was one of their like focus books that they have in their beautiful case.
So a design problem, which is fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it's apparently a thing in the interior design community that apparently people know a lot about, and I'm definitely interested to see how I can map that onto my much less I'm not really a minimalist myself, but
Okay, so what is next?
All right, final item on our agenda is to go into a brief executive session to review applications for new folks who wanted to join our DEIB committee. And so in order to have some anonymity and not be like blabbing about people here on Facebook, we're gonna shut off the cameras. But hopefully, Pete, if you're in the next room, would you be able to keep the Zoom up but stop broadcasting us so that our friends can stay and be part of this conversation? And I would ask you all, my friends, the students, to leave at this point too, so that we're not blabbing about individual people in front of all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Yes,
so much
thank you
for coming.
Thank you guys for
Feel free to
coming.
come
We were
next
so
month.
glad to see you.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Hopefully we manage
Drive safe, stay warm.
conflict with civility.
Hopefully, I know, I can't wait to
Storm that
read
we
the
have
write-up.
coming, Michael.
Want to make sure everybody's safe and sound, and also
Yeah.
it's cold again.
Should I be taking notes on this or no?
Um,
Because the notes are public.
yeah, I think
I think I should.
probably no, we don't take notes during executive session.
Right.